Hello, church. Pastor Tim here from the sanctuary of the North Hills Community Baptist Church. And I want to begin today by saying to you what you probably already know. This has been a long, strange year. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but the last time we were together corporately for worship in this physical space was back on March 22nd. That's 32 Sundays ago, about 2/3 of the year. And that's a long time. I can tell you this too, as the pastor, the church is a pretty lonely place without the people here. When I come in on a Sunday morning, I come down the driveway and there are 4 or 5 cars sprinkled throughout the parking lot. Those who are going to participate in that morning's online worship service. And then when I come in here and I walk from my office down here to the sanctuary, as I'm walking down that hallway, I don't hear any squeals of delight and laughter coming from the toddler room, and that's usually a pretty jovial place. And just this last Sunday, I was downstairs in Fellowship Hall before worship, and I walked past the choir room, and I realized how much I missed the dulcet tones of the music that's emanating from that room, which is a surefire sign that the choir's doing last-minute practice for the worship service. And the worst part about a Sunday morning is when I come in here, you are not here. It's been a long, strange year. Now, I also have to admit that we've been blessed in some unimaginable ways, and we continue to be blessed. Our director of music ministries, Heidi, has done an outstanding job with her gifted and creativeness as she's put worship services together. Her sidekick, the interim production engineer, Matt, has done so many things behind the scenes that it would be possible to enumerate them all. And we want to thank him gratefully. There's other people who've been involved, like the video techs who come every week, Kieran O'Neill and Sarah Heffron and Brian Gondaware. And of course, the one who keeps us moving and on beat is Mark Mendocino, who is our percussionist on those Sundays. So a great big thank you to them. Virtually, they've made this a memorable time. Now, I also want to say a heartfelt thank you to our board of deacons here at the church. The 13 people you called to be your deacons have been hard at work for these last 8 months. Shortly after the COVID virus came, they decided to forego their monthly meetings and instead go to bi-weekly meetings so that they could keep on top of the latest developments and the needs of the church and come to some informed decision about how and when we'll come back together as a congregation to worship. And a couple of months ago, they made some important decisions. They decided that we will return to worship based on information gleaned from the Allegheny County Health Department. And let me quote this to you. We decided we will return to worship as long as the 10-day trailing percent positive numbers for COVID testing in Allegheny County are below 9% on a sustained basis, and that they are not currently trending upward. And so because of this, we made the decision to return to worship on Sunday, November the 8th at 11:30 p.m. here in the sanctuary. And you should have read some of that and the details about how that will be handled in the communicator that came through your email a couple of days ago. Now, interestingly, shortly after we made that decision, we found what you've been finding too, that the last couple of weeks, the numbers all over the United States and in Pennsylvania have been creeping up. So we spent a good part of this last Sunday's meeting making this decision about what we would do if we had to cancel a worship service, perhaps even our first worship service. Here's what we decided. We decided that if we have to make a decision to cancel worship, we would make that decision 8 days prior to the scheduled service. So what that means practically is if we have to cancel Sunday, November 8th's worship service, we will notify you on Saturday, October 31st. We will email you. It will be on our church website. It will be on our answering machine. And we will continue to do that every succeeding week. This will allow us to notify the congregation in advance, make necessary preparations with the reservation system, etc. Now, obviously, We're all looking forward to the time when we can gather together safely in this sacred space. But I would be remiss if I didn't remind you that the worship services we're going to experience going forward are going to look a lot different than the one we last celebrated in this space on March 15th. There are some precautions we have to take for our own and others' safety. For instance, number one, there's a limited occupancy here in the sanctuary of 40 people so that we can maintain appropriate social distance. Number two, we will be limited to the second floor upper area of the church only, because these are the areas that we clean weekly, and we do so according to CDC guidelines. Thirdly, we'll use a reservation system called Eventbrite, and soon you'll be receiving information about how that system works. There will be no singing, fourthly, until it's deemed safe to do so. Number five, obviously, we'll be practicing social distancing, not just when we're in the sanctuary here, but before we come and after we leave the sanctuary. Sixth, masks must be worn at all times. In order to enter the sanctuary, number seven, you'll be required to fill out a form that indicates whether you've traveled to an at-risk area or been in contact with someone who is COVID positive. And if you have been, you will not be permitted to enter the sanctuary. And number eight, if you're running a fever, the likewise goes for you. And finally, upon entering, you'll be seated in specific areas deliberately spaced apart. Now, I know this sounds like a lot of regulations, but the bottom line is, as Christians, it is our duty and responsibility to be caring for ourselves, but first and foremost for our sisters and brothers. And I know what you might be thinking after hearing all of this. Phew, this sounds a lot different from the time when Jesus got into a boat off the Sea of Galilee and preached to hundreds of people packed together on the sands of the seashore there. And it is. It is. Like I said, it's been a long, strange year. But I have to end by saying I've been extremely encouraged by how the church has come together and grown together in the middle of what anyone would call an extremely trying time. There have been phone calls to keep in touch, emails. There have been countless Zoom calls. I don't know about you, but I'm thankful for Zoom, but it is interesting to see some of the backgrounds some of you have when we're on those Zoom calls. I don't know if you're aware of this, but over $10,000 has been given to the Deacons Fund. Early on, we encouraged people to give to the Deacons Fund so we could meet the needs of the people in the congregation. Over $10,000 has been received and disseminated because of your gifts. Some of you gave your entire government checks just for that purpose. Our church budget has been holding up very well, and we weren't quite sure how that would happen or what would happen at the beginning of this crisis. The youth group has flourished. Just this past year in the summer, 23 youth gathered because their mission trip was canceled, and they gathered here to work in the church and at the homes of some of our members and friends. I also think it's true that all of us at various points during this crisis have been disoriented, we've been discouraged, we've been distressed, and it's not been easy. I confess, even as a pastor, there are times when I wonder how we'll get through this or that. But I want us to remember, before we go, this one thing. It will not always be like this. This is simply a point in time that we're called to go through together. We follow the God who says innumerable times throughout the scriptures these words, "Look, I'm doing a new thing." And my prayer is for you, for me, for the entire congregation, that we will be given the gift of eyes of faith in the days, weeks, and months to come, to see what God is doing. And when we've seen what God is doing, I pray the Holy Spirit will give us the power to perform the words that the Apostle Paul says, that we should run with perseverance the race that is set before us, confident in what waits at the finish line. We look forward to seeing you in church. God bless you.